Welcome into the Awesemo.com MMA live before lock, as we are here to get you ready for UFC 273, which goes down, of course, later on tonight here in my home state of Florida. Up the road from me in Jacksonville, of course, is headlined by two title fights. Plus, also, we've got a big matchup in the welterweight division between Khamzat Chimaev and Gilbert Burns. Of course, we are sponsored by Prize Picks. Talk about Prize Picks later on in the show. I will tell you, when I was on Prize Picks earlier today, there was one prop that really stuck out to me, and we'll talk about that later in the show. Of course, be sure to smash that thumbs up button. Of course, you got any questions, line those up in the chat. And of course, if you throw a super chat, it will go to the top of the queue. As always, I'm joined by the fighter, Pete Rogers Jr. I will tell you, me and Pete have been kind of discussing game theory right here before the show, because obviously, I mean, look, we're looking at these top three fights, and in terms of sitting there and going, okay, what are we doing with these top three fights? I will tell you, I've created a couple of groups over in Fantasy Cruncher today, because a lot of it is like, okay, let me see what this spits out. One of those groups I put out there was a group of Volkanovski, Yan, and Chimaev, and I said, give me two of these guys in every lineup. Now, look, the popular combination ended up throwing the third guy being in there with Shan Sung Jung, which I really didn't love. But I feel like that's going to be the popular combination today of picking two of those three guys, Pete.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely love the 9,000 options, and I've been debating and trying to put my finger on the correct combination that's going to be a part of the optimal lineup. And, you know, truthfully, it's a struggle, because you're trying to forecast the future and trying to figure out the path to victory and what happens and who could get takedowns and how much volume, and when does a finish occur? Does it occur in the third round, which is kind of the worst case scenario? In my opinion, though, like I feel like, you know, obviously getting to one of the 5-round bouts makes a ton of sense for a lot of lineups. I think fading both 5-round bouts doesn't make a lot of sense. I mean, it is super contrarian and anything could happen, but I think that you're somewhat capping your upside. So getting to a Volkanovski or a Petr Yan or something like that, I think it's just like a nice first step. Me personally, though, I can't really get away from my boy Khamzat Chimaev. He's my boy, and I have to. I'm just worried that he might win a little too quickly. We'll have to see. And obviously, he only has 3 rounds to work with.
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously a thing we're going to talk about. Man, maybe only one of these guys ends up being in the optimal lineup. I mean, you know, because when I was doing my office hour earlier, you know, someone was asking me about how do we get different today. Now, a super way to get different would be to try to get away, maybe only have one of these guys. I did crunches getting away from the fighters in the top 3 fights. Let's just say I didn't like the lineups that was coming out there. And the problem is, especially with the main event, co-main event, your fear is, and you brought up a great point with Petr Yan. Go back to that Jose Aldo fight. 150 points in a 5th round stoppage. He was well on his way to 120 plus points in the first matchup with Sterling. You know, maybe Volkanovski is a guy people may try to get away from, thinking that the ceiling is on the Yan and Chimaev side.
Yeah, and I think that's, for me, like I might slightly prefer the combination of Khamzat Chimaev and Petr Yan, just because I feel like Volkanovski is super patient and extremely intelligent, and he won't necessarily rush anything. He has such a high fight IQ where he might be a little bit too patient at times, and we've seen it in the Holloway fights, but obviously that's against Max Holloway. And I also think like there are some other wrinkles that we need to, you know, talk about and discuss. It's like how the Korean Zombie is working with a strong team who's surrounded by talented wrestlers and fight ready, where his hands are going to be sharp and his wrestling defense should be, you know, better than it has been in the past. But to be honest, like, he's actually had some sneaky good wrestling, and, you know, Jose Aldo really just took him down because it's largely due to the injury. But I mean, like, Korean Zombie could stuff some takedowns. He's stuffed plenty from other fighters. I'm torn. Obviously, I love Volkanovski. I love Petr Yan, and I love Khamzat Chimaev. But for me, like, for some of my builds, I'm kind of leaning towards the Khamzat and Petr Yan direction.
Yeah, it's going to be a game theory that we're all kind of considering. Of course, if you do got any question, line those up right now. You know, I was thinking about yesterday from a cash perspective of who do I want to get to, Aljo or the Zombie? And it was kind of an easy answer for me. I think it's Aljo.
Yeah, I mean, outside of volume and outside of landing a perfect shot, I think that the Korean Zombie is going to be in an uphill battle against one of the best pound for pound fighters out there, and Alex Volkanovski, regardless of what you think, because I hold Max Holloway in high regard. And what he even did in those bouts, like it's pretty telling of how talented Volkanovski is. And I think that anytime you have an underdog with wrestling upside who has shown to, a capability of winning rounds, that's why Aljamain Sterling is probably the no-brainer in that situation. I don't know, man. Like, he looks fantastic. He looks like he's in the best shape of his life. I still worry about his durability, and I worry about the emotions riding high. Obviously, that may raise the stakes in a fight like this, but I would agree with you that in a situation like that, if it comes down to Korean Zombie or Aljamain Sterling, if I don't like either of them, but if you have to pick one, it's got to be Aljamain Sterling.
Yeah, and to me, it's more getting there in cash, which then allows me with my other 5 fighters kind of get to who I want to get to today. Of course, if you're not a member of Awesemo Plus, you want to get a peek what's behind the paywall. Today's free premium data and tools are UFC pro plays, NHL ownership projections, MLB main slate ownership projections, and also NBA player projection. Actually updated my UFC pro plays a little earlier on this afternoon. Of course, we lost a fight yesterday. Jairzinho Rosenstruck versus Marcin Tybura scratched this card due to an illness for Marcin Tybura. I see Pete over there just shaking his head because look, Rosenstruck was going to be a guy that you're going to want to get to today. I mean, no question about it.
I'm pissed. It screws up everything. It screws up a lot of my builds, and it also screws up some of my parlays and even my prop bet. Like, I really liked Rosenstruck from a KO perspective, and I thought that he could get Marcin Tybura out of there. You talk about Tybura, a guy who does not necessarily handle damage well. Regardless, that fight's canceled. I'm bummed. And now I think that's going to somewhat concentrate the ownership around some popular plays, and some other fighters might be flying under the radar. So obviously, like we do every week, we adjust to the slate, and I can't wait to see what the industry does.
I will tell you, when I was looking at our ownership projections, one of my first thought was, obviously I'm always looking at, who are the chalk plays of the slate, but then I'm looking at who are the under 20% plays out there. And Pete, there's a lot of fires that stick out to me. I mean, I will tell you this, in terms of GPPs, I don't want to get to Dern and Torres. I just don't see that as a GPP fight. I mean, obviously, Dern's got to get the fight to the ground. I just think that Torres is just going to dance around her and just jab her to death all fight long. Yeah. Death, taxes, and Tecia Torres going to decision.
I love it. And, my buddy was asking me about it. He's like, I feel like Mackenzie Dern could be the first person to get rid of Tecia Torres. And I'm like, if Mackenzie Dern wins, it's via sub. So like, if you're taking this from a betting perspective, you can hedge a little bit. You go Mackenzie Dern via sub or Tecia Torres large via decision, because I feel like that's the only way this happens. I don't see Mackenzie Dern being better than her for 3 rounds. I don't think that she has, next level wrestling. She's so worried about getting her hands to the next level with Jason Perillo. But I tell you what, and I always mention it, of how jiu-jitsu fighters need to focus on developing their wrestling. If she could develop her wrestling, like if she went to fight ready, Jason, right? Can you imagine how much better of a fighter she would be? Because she's starting to really, add to her strengths. She's getting a skill that will complement her jiu-jitsu. You know what I mean? Like, her hands are going to get her by, but she doesn't need to be striking so much. She needs to be engaging where she's the strongest. And largely she doesn't have the best success when it comes to getting, people down.
I would tell you, man, when you talk to people in this industry about fight ready, the one thing you hear about that team is the kudos for what Henry Cejudo brings to that team as a head coach with that wrestling. Of course, that's where Chan Sung Jung does his training here in the United States. The Zombie is primarily there because Eddie Cha is a striking coach there. Of course, Eddie Cha, formerly of the MMA Lab, which, by the way, that was a one-time gym home of Mackenzie Dern, and those two decided to part ways a couple of years ago. Also got to note, 2 fighters did miss weight yesterday. Kay Hansen, she missed weight for a strawweight matchup. Also, Julio Arce missed weight for his fight against Daniel Santos, who I will tell you, when I was doing my crunches this morning, he was my most popular underdog that was coming up, and Julio didn't look good on the scale, man.
No, not at all. And obviously you guys are listening to the show, and I didn't really have too much interest in Santos, just because you have a fighter coming from a long layoff, debuting against a very tough, fighter in Julio Arce, who's 4-3 in the UFC, but just relatively tested and just a very skilled opponent. Now, I've seen a lot of fights. I've seen a lot of weigh-ins. I've been a part of a lot of it. I will tell you that Julio Arce looked like one of the worst fighters I've seen on the scale. And I sent you messages about it, Jason. And even like walking up to the scale, he was breathing very, very heavily. And he just looked labored. He looked like he had a horrible cut. He looked like a zombie. He's up there on the scale. He misses weight. And then when he steps off, he's starting to sway. And he just didn't seem like he knew what the hell was going on. Coaches should have saved him. The fight should have been scrapped. The fight should not be cleared to go forward, because obviously now we're worried about fighter safety. And a situation like this is extremely crucial to like just everything, like his own health and just the sport going forward. With all that being said, the fight is going through. And I have to say that Santos is one of my favorite underdogs on the slate now, just because he comes from a strong camp. I think that a KO for Santos is definitely live, because you have Julio Arce coming off of a nasty knockout to Song Yadong, but now he's having a horrible weight cut. And I don't know. You mix those two together, Jason, you know that that's going to zap your chin. So I think Santos is one of the best underdogs on the slate, and I'm extremely exposed to him today in regards to my lineups.
Yeah, I mean, Kay Hansen was an underdog that I was looking at, a part of this card, and primarily the reason I was looking at her was the takedown upside. Because I mean, look, if Kay Hansen's going to win, it's going to be whether or not she can get the fight to the ground. I know she put stuff out on her social media yesterday about missing weight, and look, I mentioned on the strategy show, I feel that if she loses, that she's going to get cut by the UFC, and I think missing weight, and if she loses tonight 3 in a row, I think it's likely her time at this point in the UFC will be over, but she's still a young fighter. If you tell me that fight plays on the feet, I think Rodriguez wins. I mean, there's, Raquel Pennington is someone that I'm limiting exposure to today. Mm-hmm. Aspen Ladd, I don't mind getting to her in terms of an underdog play, potentially with a stoppage via submission, but I don't, when it comes to all the female fights, I really don't love them for GPPs.
Yeah, so the Dern and Tecia Torres fight is not really GPP territory for me. If it happens, it happens. But for me, I think that 90% of the time it doesn't come through. And I'll take those odds all day long. Kay Hansen not doing herself any favors, in a bad spot with the UFC, and now missing weight. So props to you. If she does lose this, I do think that she might be outside the UFC. And I think this is a little disappointing, because she's a young fighter and she's 1-2 in the UFC, and I think that there is some takedown upside in a matchup like this against Petr Rodriguez, and it's the upper body attacks. It's the trip takedowns. It's not the traditional double leg takedowns, but all in all, she needs to be, moving a lot and having a good gas tank in order to survive against Petr Rodriguez, who hits pretty hard and has some good striking for the division. It's just 7,900. Let's say Kay Hansen gets a couple takedowns, does not find a finish. Does she become a part of the optimal lineup? This might just be a headache of a matchup where neither fighter make it into the optimal lineup. And then as far as the Aspen Ladd Raquel Pennington fight, I don't know. I don't know. I have not really been on board with Aspen Ladd. I understand that she has tremendous ground and pound, and when she gets on top, the top pressure's a little bit too much for her opponents. But Raquel Pennington, she can get taken down, but like for a lot of her fights, it's pressing her opponents against the cage as well. And Aspen Ladd did not look good in her previous bout. So we'll have to see for that. You could do worse than Aspen Ladd. She's a part of my long shot pool, but that's a fight that I just despise, and literally no interest in Raquel Pennington.
Here's a question I've been asked a couple of times over the last 24 hours. You're only building one lineup. Mm-hmm. You got to put Oleinik and Vanderaa in your lineup. Who you picking? I have no idea, because I don't trust either one of these guys. Mm-hmm. My gut says I would go Vanderaa.
I don't.
But I'm scared. But I'm so scared that Vanderaa uses his size advantage to a takedown, and then Oleinik submits him off his back.
Yeah, I mean, I for most of my lineups, I just got to one of them. I don't really care. Shout out to my buddy Josh. He mentioned that he really likes Oleinik a lot more than I do, and he brought up some good points as well. And Oleinik, I went back and I watched some more footage when I was at work last night, and it's crazy to think that he took Mark Hunt down and was, competing on the feet with Mark Hunt and submitted him. And it's just like, I don't know, like Jared Vanderaa is not a good fighter by any means, but is Olenek a good fighter at this stage of the game?
No.
He's 8-7 in the UFC. Vanderaa is 1-3. The experience edge lies with Alexei Olenek. I definitely think that the fight IQ for both fighters is somewhat absent. This is a neutral play for me where I really don't care. And I just got to both sides, truthfully. Like this is like a completely volatile matchup that most likely will be a part of the optimal lineup. So treat it accordingly. Don't necessarily favor one side, but if you want to favor, experience, then you got to go with Alexei Olenek.
Of course, it's a busy day over here at Awesemo.com as we got a ton of sports action going on. Of course, we got right now we're talking about MMA. After us, we got NBA Deeper Dive, and then they'll have NBA Live Before Lock. Then I've got NASCAR Live Before Lock because me and Chris will be breaking down tonight's NASCAR race. So we've got you covered all day long over here at Awesemo.com, and we've got a great promo going on right now over Awesemo.com for MLB Express Weekly Pass, where you can get that for just $1. All you got to do is use the promo code FASTBALL at checkout. This pass includes our player rankings, ownership rankings, lineup builder, and our expert Discord chat. Once again, use the promo code FASTBALL at checkout, or simply click the link in the video description below to activate this offer. It's a great way to get started with MLB DFS. So sign up before this offer expires on April 11th. I was watching MLB Live Before Lock earlier today as I was putting together my lineup, and it's always good when you're kind of going through two catchers to go to, and they both hit a home run. So I was like, okay, good. At least I got the catchers got more points, but unfortunately, Brandon Woodruff, it's not off to a great start here today. As I was checking my scores here a little bit, I was like, ooh, that's not a good start here. But you got to check out great stuff we have for MLB season. Of course, the opening weekend of the MLB season. But of course, we're here to answer any question you have, so you can line those up in the score chat or right here on YouTube. And as I mentioned, if you throw a super chat in there, we appreciate that, and your question will go to the top of the queue. So let's hit the top of the chat. I'll kind of work my way down in terms of all these questions that are available here. Pennington versus Ladd is the first question. So we kind of discussed there. I mean, look, Pennington is going to give you leverage, no question. But I thought Aspen Ladd, for the first time in a while, looked good on the scale.
Yeah, I mean, yes, you're right. That should go without saying, right? And it doesn't. It's kind of pathetic, to be honest. Like, fighters missing weight is just like, I don't know. It drives me crazy because like that's your job, make weight and then fight. And like we shouldn't be praising somebody for making weight. She did look better because she finally made weight, but man, I don't know really what to take out of that. I mean, she still has to fight, and I do think that Raquel Pennington can somewhat nullify her game. It's a fight that I'm a little bit neutral to, and I'm not really trying to get too much because I don't necessarily see a finish for either fighter.
You knew this question was coming, Pete.
Okay.
The S word. Stacking. So Dave goes stacking today. Might be the first time ever stacking. Look,
he's gonna stack, huh?
If I was going to stack, if all caps, if it would be the co-main event.
I would agree with you. If there is a stack, then that would probably make sense. I mean, these guys have fought each other already. Adjustments will be made. If Aljamain Sterling comes out and has a more calculated game plan and doesn't throw, caution to the wind and is a little bit more methodical with everything, he could win rounds. He needs to win 3 rounds. I would agree with you. I don't really care for stacking on a fight card like this, but it makes sense anytime we have 5-round bouts.
Corey, appreciate you in the super chat. He goes, I'm thinking Weeks breaks the slate today. And your thoughts on Josh Frimm? Look, Darion Weeks, I think he has to drag Ian Gary in the deep waters. On Josh Frimm, I do like him as an underdog play today. My only concern is, does Anthony Hernandez just put a pace on him early on this fight that which happened to him in his fight there at FAC, his last fight before getting into the UFC, and that a blitzing style hurts him because he does keep his chin out there.
Yeah, so I I view the Hernandez Fremd fight as like an optimal fight. I just, based on how they both are, they both are extremely aggressive. I'm actually I was impressed with how much bigger Fremd is in comparison to Hernandez. And, they have similar reaches of 75 inches and 76 inches, but Fremd has a massive height advantage of 6'4" versus 6 foot. So like, I feel like if Anthony Hernandez wanted to, and if he wanted to be a little bit more structured with a little bit more disciplined, I feel like he could be a welterweight. I know that for most of his career, he's been a middleweight, but I don't know. He just doesn't strike me as a guy that is filling out his frame correctly. And he definitely has the experience. We know that he has the wrestling, but this is a fight where I really, really circled. And I went back and I watched regional tape. I went back and I watched, UFC footage of Anthony Hernandez. I wanted to try to get every edge possible. And basically what I came out of it is that this fight's probably going to be optimal. They're just so aggressive. Hernandez was getting pieced up on the feet if you go back and you watch Park. But it was his wrestling that really saved the day. I think people could be a little bit surprised about Fremd. The issue with Fremd is his striking defense. So I have issues with both guys, but I want exposure to this fight just because I see, points galore.
Next up, Spencer says, so excited for tonight. Who is your favorite MVP on FanDuel and Underdog, of course? So we did the strategy show. The salaries were not over there on FanDuel. I mean, look, I think you got to look at someone like Chimaev. I mean, I think really sticks out on FanDuel. Yep. Other ones that I would say underdogs on FanDuel, Marco Madsen at $12.
Yeah, I think so. Marco Madsen, obviously there's volatility surrounding it. Now, there's a lot of people out in the industry that I respect, and they are, backing Vince Pichel to somewhat have a come from behind victory. And it's because like he has terrible takedown defense. And Marco Madsen is somewhat of a gasser. So when round 3 comes around, if you don't have fresh legs and you don't have the cardio to sustain a pace, your opponent, you're a sitting duck for big shots, for big power shots, leg kicks, knockout blows, all of that. That is definitely viable. Vince Pichel needs to, my big thing, right, is that Vince Pichel is just super, super aggressive. And when he wants to, like when he sees red and he has to go for the kill shot and try to find that finishing blow, everything's a big motion. It's like super exaggerated where I feel like Marco Madsen just can easily get double unders or just change levels. So I'm back at Marco Madsen. I think that he's one of the best values on the slate. There is a ton of volatility there, but I do think that there is plenty of upside. I think that he has some sneaky submissions, some good ground and pound. And I think it might be somewhat, similar to the Austin Hubbard performance where he went 8 of 12 of takedowns and has to avoid the big shots of Vince Pichel. But I really, really like Marco Madsen for a lot of my lineups, regardless of the platform.
Andrew goes, if Volkanovski and Jan both score 130 points in a decision, there's a good chance that you'll need both Zombie and Sterling in an optimal if lower price options don't win.
So for the most part, he's correct. Because if it goes 5 rounds, you would imagine it's competitive, and especially if there's a ton of points. But like we've seen people where it's like, think of Renato Moicano against Rafael Dos Anjos, right? Like he got beat from pillar to post, and obviously like the underdog is slate dependent. But like he did last the whole 5 rounds, which absolutely blew my mind. There is a situation where you have the 5-round bouts just scoring so well and the underdogs just getting pieced up throughout. But for the most part, he's onto something, and that's why we are considering stacking today.
Scott trying to put you against in a catchweight fight against Chimaev. Chimaev probably has
Chimaev would kill
40 pounds on you.
Chimaev would. My best bet is just to, I don't know.
I would bet you Chimaev walks around between
210.
I was gonna say 195, 205 ish.
He's bigger than that.
He's a big boy. And look, I think that when they get into the cage tonight, I think it will look like 2 guys in 2 different weight classes.
You saw it at the weigh-ins, and the stare down, and all the funny behind the scenes videos of Chimaev. Like he always tries to get into his opponent's head, which obviously like that's what any good fighter does. But he really likes to get like a feel for his opponents as well. Like against Reese McKee, he body locked him, he picked him up. Like at the press conference in this bout against Gilbert Burns. They were like shaking hands, but not really shaking hands. They were like testing each other's strength. And then I don't know, it might be something to just add to his confidence. But regardless, I can't wait. And I'll tell you what, Gilbert Burns needs to be protecting that face, because I feel like Khamzat Chimaev is going to be hunting that early KO.
I mean, look, I know we disagree on this, but what if Burns catches him early? I think it'd be interesting to see how does he respond. I mean, look, we all see the hype is real. There's no one is doubting that. I think that the question we all have is, and I think we had this question about Khabib, for a long time, is like, okay, what happens when someone is able to land that punch? We saw that against Michael Johnson, and then he just took Michael Johnson down and basically took him to the corner. And
one of my favorite performances ever, Jason.
It basically tells Michael Johnson, why don't you just quit? Because this ain't going to go well for you.
Absolutely. So, a lot of times the UFC hype machine can really start to overblow odds and just the perception of the audience and everything. And that's where Jason and I come in, and we kind of, block out the noise, and we try to, see it for what it is. Is it truly hype, or is it just like UFC hype machine? Like Paddy Pimblett, for example, he's going to run into some adversity and he's not going to pass the test. We've already seen it in his 2 UFC fights thus far. His chin's up in the air, gets hit, gets dropped, overcomes, and then gets a submission finish. No problem at all. And then knockout finish in his debut. I'm telling you, like, how I saw Tom Aspinall in my lens is how I'm seeing Khamzat Chimaev, but even better. So we'll see if I'm correct or not. I think that he's the real deal. And if he makes quick work of Gilbert Burns, I think then everybody's going to be onto it until he passes the next test. You know what I mean? Like, we're always a little hesitant until we've seen it. And I'm here to tell you that it's okay to be early, especially on a card like this.
I mean, look, and this is a massive step up in competition. Let's not kid ourselves. I mean, this is not, hey, let's like Ian Gary was talking about this week. And he's basically like, look, I'm not trying to rush this thing. He goes, I'm just trying to take a step at a time. Where, I mean, look, the UFC has kind of made that decision, and Chimaev's management made that decision. Let's get right into the deep waters here. And this is a huge test tonight. I think he's going to pass it, but I mean, you can't deny that Burns does have power in those hands.
Oh, no denying it all. Yeah, like, that's why a win over Burns will catapult him to the top. And you have Dana talking about, if he passes this test, a Covington and Khamzat fight makes a ton of sense. And I'm like, hey, I'm here for it, bro. I'm here for it. Now, as far as like a prospect with so much hype that maybe it's not reality, and Ian Gary might be that guy for me, where I'm just like, yeah, he's really, really good, but I see a ton of holes, and I see somewhat of a green fighter that even a fighter in Weeks can definitely expose. So I don't hate getting to Weeks at all, because Weeks had a pretty extensive amateur background, and a professional background is just somewhat limited, but he looks super refined. Like, he was pretty impressive in that Brian Barberena debut.
I got to bring up this tweet that I sent Pete a little before the show. If you have not seen this tweet, you got to check it out. It is from Gerald Mershart. Want to get completely annihilated tonight? Take a shot every time the clip of Khamzat sending me to the Shadow Realm plays during UFC 273.
Bro, I mean, it happened, right? So, like, be a good sport about it. Recognize, like, there's worse things, right? Like, you could be getting knocked out against anybody in UFC. Like, if you get knocked out by one of the best prospects and maybe one of the best fighters ever, like, don't really hang your head with that result. Obviously, it still burns, but it is what it is. That's a game we play.
And look, and this is the right time to fight Khamzat Chimaev. You don't want to be fighting this guy in a year or two. As he continues to develop those skills, but Burns is about 3 guys who's called out Khamzat Chimaev. The other 2 being Neil Magny and Bilal Muhammad. There's just guys that just don't want to fight this guy. Better dog for a GPP single entry on DraftKings. Tough one here. Aljo or Weeks?
Single entry. Well, for single entry, I feel like a ton of ownership is going to go naturally towards Sterling. And I will say Weeks, because him spoiling Ian Gary wouldn't really surprise me from what I've seen on film. So I will say Weeks, but it's close.
Yeah. Nate goes, I'm going with Vulcan Zombie in the same lineup. Hate it though. I'm with you there, Nate.
Yeah, agree.
I would rather, if you look, I'm not a stacking person, but if you are going to stack a fight, I'd much rather get to the co-main event than the main event.
Yeah, so if you're stacking, only stack the 5 rounds. Don't stack anything else. Don't be like the people that stack the first fight of the night. Don't do that.
Joshua goes, Dern's takedown horrible as well. Well,
it is bad.
Well, first off, how many jiu-jitsu guys you go, they got great takedowns?
That's what I'm saying. Like I see it. I see it every day. I see it every day. Like, that's why, like, when a wrestler, a really, really strong wrestler joins a jiu-jitsu academy, the jiu-jitsu coaches say, hey, let's have you teach the wrestling takedowns. Like, there's a reason this happens. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no question about it. Nako's, will it affect Tecia Torres mentally after her girlfriend, I think actually married now, Pennington, loses to Aspen Ladd?
It's a great question. I've always had a weird feeling about stuff like that, right? Like, teammates is one thing. Boyfriend and girlfriend is another thing. Siblings is another thing. Like, that's something that's an X factor that we really don't know. If things go horribly for one or the other, you would imagine that has to mentally tax the other one. So I can't really tell you. Neither can Jason. In a situation like that, if one of them gets destroyed, maybe from a betting perspective, you start to sprinkle the opponent in the following fight.
We had the last one was the De La Rosas that I could sticking out in my mind on the same card. I want to say last year, Montana, De La Rosa, and why is her husband's first name escaping my memory?
Mark De La Rosa and Montana.
Yeah, Mark De La Rosa. Yes.
Yeah.
Trying to think of other ones that I'm aware of that stick out to me. There's a lot of relationships in the MMA community. Let's just say that.
Well, a lot of it is coaches too. So we can't really. That's a whole nother discussion.
Yeah, there's been plenty of that. Of course, this is the Awesemo MMA Live for Lock show, and we are sponsored by Prize Picks. Of course, you can get 1 free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum when you sign up, deposit, and play over at Prize Picks. Of course, use that promo code Awesemo for instant first match deposit of up to $100. And I will tell you this: takedowns. I mentioned there was one prop that really stuck out to me. We talked about this prop on Thursday, Pete. It's changed.
Uh-oh.
Khamzat Chimaev is now at 2.5.
Yeah, they screwed up.
I like the under there.
You think that he only requires 2?
Yeah, I don't think he gets a 3.
It's close. It's close.
I like the 2.5 more than I like the 2. Let's just say that.
Okay.
When it was 2 when we talked about on Thursday. The Mark Madsen over 3 takedowns. I still like that one. I think he's got the ability to rack up a good amount of takedowns. I do like the Ian Gary under 10 minutes on fight time. And I do like the Chimaev under 7.5 minutes.
I'm with you on that.
So be sure to play over there at Prize Picks. As I always say with Prize Picks, sometimes you got to get earlier on in the week. I know when the props came out on Petr Yan's fight time, it was 23.5. Of course, people started hammering that one. Now it's down to 20. So you got to take advantage when those props do come up. Play over there at Prize Picks. Of course, get 1 free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum when you sign up, deposit, and play over at Prize Picks. You get an email within 24 to 48 hours to redeem your free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. Move on to more questions here. Of course, Khamzat, Weeks, Torres, Rodriguez, Madsen, and Yan for $1 single entry. I'll tell you this. I don't like Tecia Torres.
Yeah,
and it's not from her. It's a fantasy point perspective of, if you look at Tecia Torres, I understand why the price point sticks out to you, but ultimately, what do you think? First off, do you think you need 750 points
to
win a single entry?
It's going
700 points to get a single entry. Can Tecia Torres be optimal when you need 700 points? I don't think she is.
I don't think so either. And like in a situation like this, obviously each fight is its own, but I think like the Brianna Van Buren fight, a fighter that likes to get the fight to the mat, Tecia Torres scored only 70 points and, had to defend 5 takedowns and even attempted a couple. So I can definitely see something like that where it's a ton of volume on the feet and getting 70 points at 8,000 may be enough, but you would need the rest of the underdogs to completely not come through at all. And I on a week like this where there are so many live underdogs, like I love the underdogs this week, truthfully. Like there's so many different ways to construct lineups. Like Mark Madsen, one of the most popular, one of my favorites. Josh Fremd from a knockout perspective, like him a lot. Daniel Santos, easily my number 2 favorite underdog now that we saw how Julio Arce was on the scale.
Thoughts on Madsen and Mickey Gall? We kind of talked about Mark Madsen, so we'll talk about Mickey Gall here. I know you talked him up a little bit on the strategy show.
Yeah, it's a weird fight, right? Because we have such a small sample size of Mike Malott, a guy that used to fight at a weight class lower, now at welterweight and, look good in Dana White's Contender Series, but that was, not even a round. It was like less than 2 minutes. It was extremely short, and it's tough to really gauge how a fighter's going to be going forward, especially against a fighter, even at Mickey Gall's caliber, of just who has fought legitimate competition inside the UFC. And I will take the guy who has fought legitimate competition inside the UFC rather than a guy with a pretty record. Because, we've seen more from him. Yeah, Mickey Gall gets hurt on the feet. Yeah, Mickey Gall doesn't have the best wrestling. Sanford MMA could possibly help that. But I'll tell you what, there has been some advancements in Mickey Gall's career, and it's his power of his hands. Like, something I never thought I'd associate with Mickey Gall, but his striking is getting better. We were hoping to see it when he was working with Schilling a lot, but he can definitely hurt Mike Malott on the feet. And I feel like that's what a lot of people aren't taking into consideration, because Mike Malott's a pretty talented grappler as well. But a club and sub is definitely a possibility here. Anytime any fighter gets hurt, anytime anybody gets hurt or exhausted, they are live to get finished on the mat. And Mickey Gall, 7,400, you could do worse. I'm just expecting this one to go over 2.5 rounds.
More points than DraftKings GPP. Madsen, Hernandez, or Frem? It's a tough one.
I say the safest is Madsen, despite the volatility. I mean, Fremd is making his UFC debut, so I will say Madsen. I'm higher on. I got to more Fremd than I thought I would today, but it's just how ugly the mid-range is this week. We lost a lot of good mid-range value. So it's going to be a lot at the top and a lot at the bottom. So try to figure out who's going under owned and get some exposure there.
So there's a comment in the chat about someone making the bold prediction that Gilbert Burns will win via knockout.
Probably plus 1,200.
It made me think about, what is the prop bet Gilbert Burns wins via decision? Burns via TKO KO ranges anywhere from plus 1,100 to as high as plus 1,400. That's crazy value. Crazy value. Burns via decision as low as
been the distance,
low as 700, as high as 850.
Worth a sprinkle, but I am completely against that.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's because of we've never seen Chimaev in a third round. We have no idea what that looks like. It may look unbelievable.
Yeah, and it may. And I tell you, it will. And the reason it will is from like everything I've seen behind the scenes, and like his work rate is like unparalleled. And I want to just bring up a great comment from Bulldogger in the chat. Props to you, buddy. He says the absolute worst thing Birds could do is come out swinging hard. And I do think that will get him caught in a bad position. Underhooks will be given up pretty easily. It could tax the gas tank, and it could lead to him being put in a bad spot. So I think a methodical try to stretch this outside the round one and possibly test that gas tank is a better way. But man, it's going to be tough sledding regardless.
Calm and patient. I think that's got to be the key for Burns.
Yeah, for sure. Like, use your experience. You've been here against Kamaru Usman, but it ain't going to happen.
Wow.
It's not happening. Man. I don't think so, at least. I mean, from a GPP perspective, a data perspective, building lineups, get exposure to Gilbert Burns for sure. I'm not doing it because I don't play like a lot of the top pros, because like I feel strong in my beliefs, and like when I'm hot over a pick, as I was Tom Aspinall, I don't want to hear all this other noise, because I would have just wasted a ton of lineups on Alexander Volkov when it wasn't even a competitive fight. But that's just me. Everybody's different. It depends on the slate you're in too. Like if you're in a 150 max for small money, by all means, get some exposure to Burns.
Don't worry, team. If Go Burns wins, I will call Pete and make sure he's okay.
Everybody's got to, reach out to me if something with Hamza.
Yeah, I just go, hey man, you okay? Just making sure you're doing good.
Yeah, right, for sure. Guys, do us a favor. We got a lot of people watching. We got to get this to 150 likes. That's all we ask for this show. We appreciate you guys. Keep these questions coming.
Yeah, we'll get as many questions as we get here before we get out here. Of course, coming up after us will be the NBA Deeper Dive to get you ready for tonight's NBA slate. Of course, I'll be back at 6:30 p.m. Eastern time as I will be breaking down the NASCAR slate for tonight with Chris. Get you ready for that one. So stay tuned for everything we got over here at Awesemo.com today. Get some other questions that we have not really got into here. Joshua mentions says Hernandez can't take body shots. Frem loves to work the body. Frem does train out there at Factory X, which is more of a kickboxing gym more than anything else. Yeah. And we got News God asking if who wins, Volkanovski or Korean Zombie? I'm saying Volkanovski, and I think that Jason would agree with me as well. Yeah, I'm big on Volkanovski today, even though I will tell you when I was doing some various crunches, Zombie was coming up a ton. Yeah, that's the thing, right? Is trying to create the correct groups and the correct exposure so you're not, creating poor lineups. I mean, if he comes through, it's going to be great. But the likelihood is, as the odds suggest, this is going to be very, very tough for him to come through. Someone just asked about when was the last time Petr Yan was in the bigger cage. Of course, tonight's UFC 273 will be in the 30-footer as opposed to a 25-footer at the Apex, which I do think is advantage Petr Yan. So Abu Dhabi, that's the big cage. That would have been back in October of last year against Sandhagen. Small cage against Sterling in the first one. It was and then big cage against Aldo. Big cage against Faber. Yeah, I mean, I'm more of the small cage would have been against the first fight against Sterling. Just kind of look at some of these events. As a striker, if I know I'm in a big cage, I'm happy as hell. Yeah. I'm telling you right now, I fought in small cages and it sucks. It absolutely sucks because advantage wrestler all day long. And it's immediately like, you can't get them off you. And it's like, dude, give me my space, bro. But the big cage, like Bellator cage, felt like I was in a football field. It was amazing. And I absolutely love it. It allows the striker just so that while it's only 5 feet in total difference, when you look at the actual dimensions, it's a massive difference. That's why we always talk about the smaller cage for the most part is beneficial to the wrestlers because you can really get your opponent up against that back of the cage and there's not much room to go around, where in the big cage, there's a little bit of an issue there. For sure. And that's why like small cage, big guys, you already know clinching's happening. Yeah. Someone goes, Burns a 55 where he's going to get smashed. I think Burns, ideally would be a 165-pound weight class fighter. Mm-hmm. I think Chimaev ideally is a 175er. I think he's going to, I don't know. I mean, yeah, I mean, I wish the weight classes were a little bit easier. There's gaps, and whenever there's gaps like that, you have fighters kind of falling in the middle. I think that Chimaev's fine for welterweight. I think that he's fine for middleweight as well. I think 2 years from now, I don't think we see Chimaev at 170. No, not at all. I think he'll just be put on so much size that getting the 170 just is not going to make sense for him. Yeah, absolutely. It's like McGregor, right? McGregor starting at 45, and then like he got way too big and fell in love with putting on muscle mass, and it's 55 and 70 going forward. Have you seen him recently? I don't know if he's hitting 55, bro. I don't think he is either, bro. There's no way. He's like, I don't know. Yeah. I was actually joking with somebody the other night. So like Connor versus Masvidal. How much promo material would be about their arrest? Right. BMF title on the line. If I'm the UFC, I do that fight from an entertainment
standpoint. I think the
no
UFC
question.
dropped the ball with not having the Nate Diaz trilogy. I really think that they dropped the ball with that because there was a ton of hype and a lot of people wanted to see that. But Conor thinking he's going to come in off the street and get rid of Kamaru Usman, it's a very, very tough fight.
I had to laugh at Nick's comment. He goes, "My favorite are the people who stack the first couple of fights that are in first for a minute."
I know. That's what I'm saying. Like that's when it's just going to be a dead money for a lot of those people. Ooh, we got a super chat from Mike.
I see that. He says, "Do you think you can fade both title fights and still be optimal? Also, if Volkanovski and Chimaev all win, who scores the lowest?"
Well, Mike, great question. Appreciate the support, brother. And can you fade both 5-round bouts? Now, in order to fade both 5-round bouts, let's just automatically give them a low projection and say the winner of the 5-round bouts, Volk and Petr Yan, so to speak, get 100 points minimum. Because anytime a fighter is in a 5-round bout and they don't get 100 points, that's complete disappointment. You need other fighters to get 100 points. And I think a week like this, there's plenty of live underdogs, but it's that 115 and up that's really going to screw you. So I think you need to have one of the title fights in order to be optimal. Not necessarily two, but one of them. And if Volk, Yan, and Chimaev all win, who scores the lowest? Let's hear it, Jason. Let me hear who you got. There's an argument for
Gut says Volk. Gut says Volkanovski.
I actually agree with you on that.
Because what concerns me is that what happens it's Chimaev 45-second knockout victory. You got a knockdown. You've got quick finish bonus. Like, man, like
that would be nice.
That's where I kind of get concerned with.
Yeah, great question, Mike. And Drill Skincare, appreciate your support. If you have a question, just shoot it in chat. We'll definitely answer it for you. But thank you for the support.
Of course, we got just about 10 minutes here left in the show. Of course, one of the things that Pete and I would love to see after this one is over is those winning screenshots. We want to see you go into the Awesemo Hall of Fame tonight. Of course, what you got to do is rocking that Awesemo avatar on your DFS profile. You can get that over awesemo.com/avatar. Tweet your wins to @AwesemoHOF. Place in the top 3 of a contest with over 5,000 contestants. You'll win a free month of Awesemo plus platinum. Of course, you can only win one free month, 2 per calendar year. So looking at some of the people that have gone into Awesemo Hall of Fame over the past couple of days, congratulations to Fields, taking over $6,000 there in a NBA contest. Also, Ryan taking down second place in NBA contest, winning $600. Also, Fick taking down first place in a PGA Showdown contest. I got to check my PGA Showdown, see how I'm doing today. Also, Steve, what he was able to do, taking down first place in an NBA contest, winning $6,000. And, of course, our guy Dave killing it over there on the live betting from the national title game as Pete just shakes his head because I know exactly how that worked out for Pete there. But
yeah, I got screwed. But you guys are great, man. And we absolutely love this. If you guys appreciate our show, we can't say enough how grateful we are. And today, Jason, we're taking some tournaments down. Everybody in chat, we're taking some tournaments down. Khamzat Chimaev, bring us to the promised land, and let's bring us to the top of those leaderboards.
FanDuel, Darian Weeks, or Mickey Gall?
FanDuel, Darian Weeks, or Mickey Gall?
Yeah.
Well, trying to think of. I'm still so stuck on the FanDuel scoring of where there's takedown defended.
Well, it's not there anymore.
I know. That's what I'm saying. I might say Mickey Gall. Just from a finish upside. I think that the safety of weeks of getting a win by just like getting takedowns is definitely live, but I'll say Mickey Gall.
Scott, I appreciate you in the super chat. Of course, Scott, if you got any question that you want us to talk about, just fire that off in the chat. We'll get to your question. Really do appreciate that. Super chat here. Got about 5 minutes here left in the show. Of course, we turn things over to NBA deeper dive. Those guys get you ready for tonight's NBA slate. Going down here. Let's see here. How do you feel about Frem, Gall, and Santos as dogs? Yeah, I mean, I think those are all dogs you have to like.
Yeah, I like Santos a lot more than I did on Thursday, obviously. And I think the industry's kind of catching on to that as well. I like Friend from a KO perspective. I like Madsen. Gall kind of is like the later tier, but I still do have some interest there. Who are we not talking about, Jason? Who are we not talking about? And I'm going to say a name, and it might be Anthony Hernandez.
Oh, let me look here.
For Anthony Hernandez, like he has already competed in the UFC. He's got takedowns. He's got good power. He's got good combinations. He's just a little too hittable for me.
There's two names that stick out to me.
Okay.
Michelle and Rodriguez. Rodriguez keeps a fight on the feet. The one thing when you talk to people who've trained with Vince Michelle, the one thing they talk about is he is extremely strong for 55.
I heard the same thing too. I don't know how the hell I heard that, but I heard that. Whereas somebody I know is like, dude, that guy's strong. Well, when it comes to takedown defense, he should use his strength because you got some pretty crappy takedown defense, my guy.
What's it? Been taken down 15 times in those last 4 fights.
I mean, shit.
I mean, look,
you can't listen. You can't say you're strong. Actually, I know somebody. Okay, he's my boy. No offense, and I'll tell him this to his face. Super, super strong, but he's like what I call like an empty house, a guy who's just looks physically imposing and has so much strength and can put up all sorts of weights, but doesn't know how to necessarily use his leverage to his best abilities. And when it comes to like MMA strength, he's weak as shit.
Okay, so does that mean Pete the Heat, aka Pete the Striker, turns into a wrestler in those sparring sessions?
Oh yeah, oh absolutely, absolutely, of course, because like man. I'm deceivably strong for my weight and my size, but I train with a bunch of heavy guys, and a lot of times I can like say like, wow, that guy's a heavy guy, but he feels like a lightweight because he just does not know how to use his strength. I think that people that train understand what I'm saying.
No, I get what you're saying. No question about here. Try to get to a couple more questions here before we get out of here. So if you got any questions, be sure to line those up in chat. Of course, be sure to smash that thumbs up button as well, as we'll get as many questions in here before we get out of here.
Chat is great, by the way. You guys are just the best and super supportive.
Michael, I am on Ian Gary today. I know Pete's not as high as I am, but I am on him today.
Now, and that's a leverage spot, right? Like where a guy like Jason is kind of like blocking out the noise, where he could actually have the Tom Aspinall blinders on with Gary, and he could be absolutely correct with it. And I'm over here just kind of maybe pumping up the underdog a little bit too much, but I don't know. It was just a relatively disappointing debut for Gary, and that's where I have my little hesitations.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think that when you look at those fighters under 8,000, Kay Hansen could be an interesting play if she can get the takedown. But if that fight stays on the feet, to me, it's Rodriguez's fight to lose.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think that there's takedown upside there, but like, does she find a finish? She's flying under the radar as far as ownership is speaking. And Mike Malott, another fighter that we don't know a lot about, maybe kind of getting lost in the shuffle with all those high appealing options.
I mean, look, I think that my gut says the optimal lineup will have 2 fighters that are 9,000 above.
Yeah, I think so too, buddy. I think so too. And like losing Jairzinho Rosenstruck really screwed up like a lot of the stuff and a lot of the construction for our lineups. And that's where like the mid-range is pretty ugly. Sam Pierce, thank you for the super chat, brother. We say best captain for DK. Plus you guys are awesome. Well, thank you, Sam. We appreciate that. Let's take a shot at the captain contest. Let's see.
Well, first off, the salaries are going to be outrageous in terms of those top guys here, and we'll end the show on this question here as I look at the salaries here. I mean, look, you're talking 14.4 for Volk, 13.8 for Chimaev, 13.5 for Jan. Ian Gary is $600 less than Jan. I'd rather spend this additional $600 to get to Jan. Look, if you were looking to, if Mark Madsen wins and gets like 8 takedowns,
that's a cheap captain where you can basically do whatever you want. I might go with Madsen in a situation like that, Sam. And News God saying if Zombie does win, how does he win? He catches Volkanovski with a big shot because he definitely has some deceiving power.
Yeah. I mean, the only other thing, and look, I don't think Volkanovski's overlooking Zombie, but maybe he's already got that mindset of that Holloway trilogy matchup. But I mean, look, if Zombie's going to win, yeah, no question, he's going to catch her. Pete, anything you want to mention before we get out of here?
No, I just want to say thanks, guys. Good luck today. And keep your eyes peeled. Hopefully no news breaks before lock. But yeah, it should be a nice night of fights. One of the best cards of the year for sure. So I'm really looking forward to it.
And of course, we'll be back on Thursday for the strategy show to get you ready for Bilal Muhammad versus Vicente Luque. Hope everyone has a great day. Looking forward to watching the fights, and we will talk to you next Thursday on a strategy show. Have a good day, everybody.